So we have a couple topics in here for this week. Um, First, something I added in um, a while ago. So this came up again during the upgrade of the Giba cluster to 16.2.4. There was a host that was offline, and basically what ends up happening is the upgrade. It says it like fails with an unexpected exception or something because it can't reach the host. Obviously, isn't good. Um, but that does raise the question of what we should do in those cases. Because if you just try to upgrade everything else, then you end up with the problem of upgrading things out of order, or you just end up with some daemons getting left over unupgraded. If you force removing the host, I mean it works, it's consistent, but it's still annoying for the user if we could do something better. So
Out of curiosity, what was done for the Giba instance when they hit this?
they had to remove the host from the cluster. Because you have to right now, because right now again it just throws an exception if you have an offline host in there. So that was the only way to get it to work. I said like for there, I mean like the minimum that we need to do is have a better exception. Like I said, you can't just say like unknown exception or whatever. I think I have copy paste there. Failed due to an unexpected exception. This is obviously not good enough for an error message, but
Agreed.
they did have to, they had to remove those basically before upgrade would go on. So I sort of laid out. I'm going right up.
Yeah, I was just about to ask if do we have some logic in place to handle these hosts and it's failing, or we don't have nothing.
There's nothing at all right now. It's not accounted for. It's just like assumed, I guess, that the hosts are offline. Like there's other places in the code where we have some stuff for like making sure we don't do things to offline hosts, but this one upgrade doesn't have it right now. Even like I know I just a while ago had a pull request for the client files and things. So we were trying to write those to offline hosts still. So there's a few places we're missing, and I think this was one of the big ones that's left. It doesn't account for offline hosts at all.
You remember some PR introduced recently? It was like to exclude offline hosts from the scheduler when placing daemons.
Yeah, I think that. Yeah, there's that in the scheduler. It's been around for I think some time. Had some logic for it, but the upgrade doesn't use the scheduler at all. But I believe there was. I want to say that was farther back though. I don't remember exactly when that got added in. But I know recently there was a PR that added the draining host to the scheduler. But I think the offline hosts were included under they call it like unreachable hosts there. I think that one's been around for some time there. So like what it does there is it'll automatically filter out any host in the marks as unreachable. And if the host is unreachable, it won't even try to. Like the big thing is it won't try to remove a daemon from that host. Even though we don't really want it in the placement, it'll just skip the removal because it can't.
Way in the past, I worked on some software upgrade, and we had like several nodes, but it was maybe the architecture was different. So whenever some node join the cluster, first it asks like for the software versions to some central node. It was a centralized architecture, and it checks against the versions it has. If the versions the node is running are below the version that's supposed to run, it just then starts an upgrade process and start like asking for new images for all the stuff that it has to run. But in our case, we don't have such like central intelligence that handles the versioning of software as far as I know.
Yeah, like what we'd be able to do to have something like that is we'd almost have to, like, we'd upgrade the rest of the hosts, and we have to track that this host, like, was offline at the time, and if it ever came back online, we could automatically do something with it. A bit more complex. I guess it would sort of do what we want. But I mean, I don't know. But it's hard because with Ceph, it seems like having the demons be the same version is kind of important. So
Yeah, maybe it could be solved with something like the agent, something that runs always in the host. Well, in this case, the agent doesn't run always, but something that's run always in the host, and check the versions and asks the
Well,
manager if
that's partly true, but what if the host is legitimately offline? You know, let's say it blew up. You know, there's an explosion in the lab and it's gone. Now there, you're going through the upgrade procedure and you've got a dead host in your cluster. Do we have to special case that too? Um, there's a couple different scenarios. One is legit dead host. One is offline host that's not
yeah,
reporting. You could write down a few of the scenarios, and then kind of say, okay, well, if we were to do the simple and dumb approach of not allowing upgrade when the host is down, what do you do to recover from this afterward? And then maybe just pick the simplest thing after kind of going through these various scenarios. We had some very similar issues in Hiketi and Gluster, where it was just kind of like, well, what do you do? And in those cases, we always ended up punting and kind of pushing it back on support teams or people just to kind of work around it manually.
yeah.
So I'm inclined to say do the simplest things first, but I think just writing stuff down and walking through the various scenarios first is helpful. I mean, Adam's already done some of that in the in the Etherpad there, but I think it needs to be kind of fleshed out a little bit.
Yeah, what I wrote down doesn't differentiate between a host that's permanently offline and a host that
Yeah.
can come back.
Yeah, so like in Hiketi, we ended up having to add all these like force flags because we worked around all these issues when the host was down, and then they wanted to bring it back online, and we got all this smart code to handle that, and then it turned out like, what do you do when the host is actually gone? So we ended up having to put like force forget, I think was the flag that we added, some silly name like that.
Yeah. I was
Maybe
sort of
one.
leaning towards just sort of doing similar, just like pushing it back on them, because you can always remove a host. We have a force flag for that already. Like if you have demons on it or whatever, we can let you force remove it. Just stuff just forgets about it entirely. And that's what they actually did because they didn't get the host back up when they were doing this. They just like marked it removed with force flag, and then it was just stuff didn't care about it anymore, and it just upgraded everything else. He said it's not the ideal scenario if you can get the host back at some point, because then it would come back and it would still be on the old versions, and because the upgrade's not in progress anymore, they would just sit like that. But I guess at some point you have to question if I don't know at that point should we just ask them to bring the host back online before they upgrade? Like should they be upgrading when their cluster is they said as safe?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Maybe
mean,
first.
and then go ahead, Renato. Sorry.
No, I would just like maybe first we have to list like as you uh, commented before, John, to list like the different situations and see like the basic ones to see if we're addressing them or not. Then to go with more complicated situations. Like first the basic ones, like some host crashes basically during an upgrade or just goes offline because some hardware or whatever issue, then what to do, like if you will stop the upgrade or will just mark this host as offline and continue without it. Like
I
to
will say
consider
that
different situations. Yeah.
any situation in which the host is permanently offline, then it's always going to be the same thing, which is they just have to remove it. I don't think there's anything else you can do about that one.
Right. Yeah, I mean,
The one with this can come back, I
right.
think, is a lot more interesting in all the different cases for that one.
Yeah, I'm not saying we should literally draw a flowchart, but it's kind of like that kind of thing where if you kind of write out a table or some sort of state diagram, I think that those conditions where yeah, sure, the node is permanently offline, they kind of end up short circuiting things, but those other cases where they bring up the node later,
Yeah.
those are the ones that you can say, okay, well, which approach to upgrading helps this case the most. And that's where you could actually do some more smart things. Like if you had an agent or something, you could say, "Oh, am I actually in sync with the rest of the cluster at boot or something?" But that's something we could talk about later after we've kind of charted out the different paths that it could take.
Yeah.
Yeah, it might just start with trying to fix the error handling, and then we go look at it deeper. And maybe in the future there's something where you can sort of track that a host in the cluster was offline when the upgrade was happening, and then you can later
Right.
like upgrade the daemons on there.
Yeah. I was just about to say something.
Um,
Sorry. Go ahead. I'll try and remember what I was about to say.
I would just only to ask, do we write down the version of images in the monitor store somewhere
We have
for
all the
all the
daemons
software?
versions because we track those as part of the refreshing the daemons, getting that metadata. It shows up in like the OrchPS output, all those.
Yes.
So Ceph ADM is able, like, once we are up, we should be able, like, to get the current image version.
And typically,
Check
the
if the
upgrades,
daemons are running this version or not.
yeah.
Not in terms of upgrade. In terms like if you are running an host, and then the host goes offline for whatever reason, then you upgrade the cluster, then you switch on the host newly, you join the cluster. Are we able, like, to get from the Mon store the current versions of the software, or probably we'll have, or we could have some issue joining the cluster in this case, like if the versions of the software are too distant, like something big has changed in the monitor?
So as far as actually like joining the cluster and like the purest sense for Ceph, Ceph doesn't actually totally control that stuff. Like if there's an OSD that was down and it comes back up and it's on the wrong version, it'll still join. We don't have to do anything for that. It just does that. As far as we are concerned for the upgrade, all we track is basically the user gives us some image or something or a version in which we then convert to an image, and then we figure out what the digest is for that image, and then for checking if the image is upgraded or not, or the daemon's upgraded, we just check if it has its image is using that same digest. So if we send you, like, hey, if a host did come back, like you re-added it to the cluster and it already had those daemons, we would then detect those daemons and we would be able to see what image they're on. So we would know immediately that they're not on the same image that all the other ones are. So as long as we have stored, which we do as like config options, what the image is supposed to be for each of the daemon types, you could technically compare them and you would know that they're on an older one in that case. See something?
Yeah, I mean, there's other things to consider too. Like if the cluster is so small that you don't have quorum or whatever, you're like, well, I probably shouldn't do the upgrade anyway. Just fix my cluster before moving on. But you're right, at like a huge scale, you might say, oh, I don't know if I want to block the upgrade. But the other thing I was going to say is if you choose to block the upgrade thing, it's very simple, and it does not preclude changing that in the future to do something smarter. So if the procedure is, oh, block the upgrade, oh, I have to mark these hosts as gone, then I can upgrade, then I can ring them back somehow if the hardware or the OS is still good. Great, we can come up with procedures. But yeah, I still think having a more thorough plotting out of all these scenarios.
Yeah.
And that's why I was thinking maybe just for now fix the error handling, which really is just the blocking case. Just so it is right now. Right now we basically already have the blocking case. Just the blocking case looks really bad because it gives you a weird error.
So it doesn't fail like midway through the upgrade with the obscure error. It fails early with an obscure error.
So technically, I guess it does fail mid-upgrade. So I guess we could do better than that, actually. But just that it tends to fail super early because every single host has a crash daemon on it, and so it usually finds pretty fast that
okay.
those are down. But yeah, I guess it probably should be another thing that if we know this is going to happen, that we could, if we just have any host in the offline list, because we do
Yeah,
track that, so we should insta fail as well. Probably when you do the upgrade start command, we can just do that in real time.
Yeah, and
So we
that
know
could
we're
come with
doing
some
stuff.
nice
like
instructions like we've detected offline hosts.
Yeah,
Hey, here's a link to the documentation.
yeah,
yeah. So like before starting the upgrade, just go and do some sanity check on all the nodes that are supposed to be up and running. And if something fails, we can just block. So, this node is not responding, so we can take it off the cluster or do whatever, but we can go with upgrade.
yeah. Yeah, so I think that might be a good starting point is have some quick check. I don't want to do too much during the upgrade start command because that's all like synchronous, like it's
Mhm.
they're waiting for that to end. But since we do typically already track the hosts that are offline, if we know something's offline right then, maybe just tell them and just instant mark it failed, and then for the in the middle of the cluster, because the host can go offline in the middle of the upgrade as well. Um, right now that would just fail with this weird like unexpected exception error. We should probably have a different exception for like couldn't reach host or something like that.
Yeah,
At least then they know what's going on, and we'll mark the host offline as well when that happens, I imagine. So
yeah.
at least that way they know why it's happening. I mean, you can't do much if it goes offline right when it's in the middle of the upgrade. You're gonna have to
Upgrade.
just say like it went offline.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, and probably whatever we do, we have try to do it in parallel just in case we have a lot of nodes. Something we can do in parallel, like checking the health of all the nodes.
Yeah, I mean, we
So
already do that when we do like our
things.
refresh toast
Uh-huh.
daemons. There's like a decorator that
Okay.
we put on, and it tries to do it in parallel. It only goes up to 10 at once because of how many threads we have in our worker pool, I think. But
Hmm.
it does some amount of parallelization for that.
That's good.
All right. I guess yeah, that's what we'll do for now. So maybe there's something more complex in the future. We probably have to do what John was saying, go through all the different possible scenarios. But for now, I guess we will just
Yeah, having this
uh,
chart at least would be good for us to know what parts are we covering and what parts are still to be handled.
yeah. Yeah, we'll do that. And yeah, for now we'll just do the basic stuff, better error handling, and we'll stop the upgrade immediately if we know that it's going to fail because of offline hosts. That should at least improve the user experience, even if it doesn't necessarily improve the outcome right now.
Yeah.
All right. I think that's probably good. That topic. So we have another one here about the RW spec format. You want to about this one, Rita?
Yeah, so basically this is related to the RGW multi-site stuff I'm working on. So first, when I started working on, I didn't take into account much the things that has to do with the daemons. But then I think it was after a comment from Adam about the placement, then I started thinking about it. And since that we are introducing this new support, I thought that it would be a good idea to provide the same support we already have for RGW daemons in Ceph in this new model. So the idea is to be able to introduce or to use the same parameters we already use for Ceph in this new spec that we use to deploy RGW multi-site. So this way we can use the same parameters for placements, for port specification, and also for SSL if we need to, because probably if we introduce the support, then users will start asking, how can I use the same thing that I'm already using for CFADM, but now in this new model. Since we can access at least these specs from this model because they are in Python common, I was thinking basically if we can just go and use the same RGW spec we already using in CFADM, or to create like some new class derived from the other one and use it. So that was my doubts actually. in the current PR, I have to say that I'm using the same one, and all the testing I have been doing so far was by using the same one, and it seems to be working okay. But just thinking, is something good in the short term, or we should go with another spec?
Yeah, I mean, I think you listed out the pros and cons fairly well. I mean, the pros are basically that it's simpler and that you can reuse it and everything. There's also the little nice, on top of that stuff you have on there, the nice detail that if you do it that way, that means because you eventually have to tell the orchestrator to deploy the daemons, you can just pass that spec directly there. You don't have to worry about maybe modifying it or something. You could just pass it along. That benefit as well. And then the cons, I think the big one is just, and what you have in here is that people might get confused.
Yeah, especially in the short term.
Yeah, if you can apply the spec and it just works in both cases, then you might apply it to the wrong one and not understand why it's not doing what.
Is the feature set possibly a superset of one of? Basically, I'm wondering if you could embed one inside the other, so that for all the common stuff, you kind of have an embedded RGW spec inside of a RGW multi-site spec. Not sure if it's possible or makes sense, but that's the first thing that popped up. And it's a kind of, you get kind of the benefits of both.
In fact, when you use the spec, I mean, if you don't create a zone to start synchronizing, till then you only have one realm with one zone group with one zone. I think then we don't have multi-site support because we haven't created a secondary cluster yet. So in that case, it's the same tool, and you can use it to create simple cluster without multi-site. And you can go later and use the zone create to start synchronizing secondary cluster with the master zone you created. That does answer your question, John?
Sort of. I was kind of trying to, like looking at your two, your pros and cons, your two options, and I was saying, I wonder if you can kind of hybridize them and kind of reuse as much of the existing RGW spec, maybe not even the parent class, but if you could just somehow reuse as much as possible. That way people don't have to relearn anything. They just know to embed the RGW spec inside of the RGW multi-site spec. Again, I'm kind of talking out of my hat here.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I'm just trying to throw ideas out there.
Yeah, I think we should be able. That's what I was trying to say. That if you use the simple spec, I mean the first one, this is just to create the realm, the zone group, the zone.
No.
That should be good for simple setup without multi-site.
Yeah.
And using the additional commands, you can go and create your secondary cluster and create another zone that syncs with the realm you have just created. I post the PR. I updated a little bit the documentation, so maybe it gives you more information about how it works right now. So if you go to the PR, you will see that we have two different specs. The first one is to create the realm, zone group, blah blah blah. Once you create all of this, then you have another command to get the tokens, and with the tokens, then you go to your secondary cluster, and you have to provide another spec where you include the token, and you get your secondary zone synchronizing with your primary cluster.
Okay. Yeah. Another stupid idea, because apparently what I'm doing today, could that output actually generate the spec for you? It's gonna give you the tokens. Could you also say generate me the whole YAML file?
Good question. I thought on that also, but you have to feel specific fields like the hosts, and that would depend on your secondary cluster. You need to know the host names, the ports you will be deploying on.
Yeah. Well,
but you can generate a skeleton and Yeah, that could be possible, but it will not be very, very useful because you have to put these specific details in it.
Hmm.
I'll just go out and say that I'm kind of in favor of just having it be the same spec. I know there's that the confusion is possible that people apply to
Mhm.
the wrong place, but that maybe that's okay, and that's out of the two options, it's the better one. Like the benefits of doing it are worth it.
Yeah, and
You just be
uh,
careful when documenting it, I guess. Maybe like a warning in the documentation. Like,
and Ceph ADM.
careful.
And I was trying to think about like the use cases since I'm not like very familiar with the RGW. So now that we have this support, I wasn't sure about like in which case you will go and use DevADM for the deployment directly, not using this model.
I mean, it would just be if you would already manually set up the realms and zones and things.
Mm-hmm.
Like the way people do it right now, basically, is you manually set up your realms and zones with other external commands, and then you just want to deploy daemons, so you just have Ceph-ADM to deploy daemons. So I think some people will still want to do that, especially if this is a new feature. People might not immediately go for it or whatever. So I think there'll still be a reason. Like I don't think we can get rid of like say applying the spec with the orchestrator because people are still going to want to use that use case.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like in the short term, we'll be having people using both of them till they realize that there is a new way to do it. Maybe
Yeah.
in the long run, we'll end up with the RTW model being used.
Yeah. I mean, the way the Ceph community is, I imagine there's some people they'll just never want to change away from it either.
Yeah.
I think that letting the spec be applied to both of them sort of makes sense. Again, even though there is that sort of risk, I said we might just have to try to rely on documentation, and then if somebody is confused, maybe they'll ask and kind of explain it. And at least if it's in the documentation, like there's a very nice like warning, like this does something different if you apply it to just the orchestrator versus to the RGW module. At least we can like link that to anyone, and we can say there anyone actually had went through it or something. Because that's probably where people will go, I guess, if they think it's not working, is they'll go check the documentation and see what's going on, or
Yeah.
they'll go to the users list or something. So.
Okay. Okay, great. So I will just introduce this warning in Ceph-ADM docs to say that there is this new model that can do or create things for you. If you want to use it, then just go and use it. Otherwise, you know that otherwise you have to create everything manually as we use it to do.
Yeah, so I just think that there's a lot of nice benefits to being able to use the same one, and I don't want to like get rid of those for something that I think is sort of a minor issue.
Okay.
Right. Those were the topics we had in there today.
I have a last topic. I introduce it.
Okay.
This is related with the new way we package Ceph ADM. Since now we have this support packaging, there is no issue with not having a version for Ceph ADM. So maybe now we are at a good point to see if we can go introduce some version.
Yeah, I think compared to the previous two topics, this one's an easy yes. Let's just do it. When do you want it? Tomorrow? Thursday? No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, it shouldn't be very hard. It should be a matter of just teaching that build.py script to generate I think in chat I said something like underscore versions py and then stick it in there.
Mhm.
And initially it might just be there doing nothing, and then we could add a function to Ceph-ADM to conditionally attempt to import it. If it succeeds, then it can provide some version numbers, and if it fails, it can basically say, "Oh, I guess I wasn't built with version information."
Mhm.
I've done similar things on other projects, so it's not like a big deal.
Okay. Out of curiosity, guys, I haven't actually checked this part. When we deploy the Ceph from the manager module now, are we deploying just an already compiled one, or are we compiling it on there?
So the way I understand it is if we're getting the built Ceph from either packages or containers, which are ultimately derived from packages, that should be a built Ceph ADM binary. The only place where you can kind of get your own homegrown one right now is that whole manual process of checking out the tree and running the build script.
Okay, so the assumption is that any container image already has this? Already compiled in there?
It should be, yes. If you find that's not the case, let me know. I'm like 98% sure that should be the case. Because one of the things I did is check that the RPM builds, and I didn't really go deeply into the debs. I just assumed if the RPMs were working, the debs were too. Because the build is ultimately run by CMake, which I'm assuming is going to be doing the same thing. It's just the kind of post-build step that actually creates the packages that differ. So yeah, CMake is running build.py, source Ceph-ADM build.py as part of the chain of things, and that's where we probably need to get some of our version numbers. So once we teach build.py how to do stuff, we probably need to plumb it through CMake. That's the only probably challenging part to this suggestion.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was wondering about, is the one that coming from the manager module. So it seems really simple for the one on the host. You just run the compile thing and it'll spit out the version thing and then it'll be there. But yeah, the one in the manager module expecting some things to already be there, so it's a bit well, I guess, yeah, do what you were saying, just touch the build process a little bit.
Yeah, basically we can look to see if there's any prior art in the CMake. I don't know if the manager binary or the mon binary actually gets like the git hash embedded in it. I've seen some of this stuff returned from some of the API commands, but I'm not sure how they're getting them. But if it's anything remotely similar, we can just plumb it through, add some command line options, something, and kind of hook it in there.
All right. I'm not entirely sure myself either how they're doing that, so I guess we'll have to look at it.
Yeah. It's just a matter of spending, an hour, 2 hours, or whatever on seeing what the other utilities are doing if they're embedding versions in the binaries.
All right. I guess the only question left then is more of when we want to put this in. I don't know if you want to wait closer to the reef release or when we want to do this, and what version we want to start with, and all those things.
Yeah,
so Ceph hasn't been versioned yet until now.
Right. So actually embedding the versions we can do without actually changing Ceph-ADM. Like, it doesn't necessarily gain a -- version command. I'm not sure. Again, it goes back to that: how much work do we want to make for ourselves with regards to backporting into the current Ceph-ADM, or the previous, I guess I should say. Because if we start making a bunch of changes that are specific to the compiled version, it might make backporting a little harder. I don't know. I haven't been around long enough to know how challenging these kind of things are with the backport process.
Then once this file is broken up, I know it's going to be challenging no matter what.
Right.
And new changes after that, but I'm not super worried about that. I feel like compared to the fact that we're already breaking things up, I don't think this is going to add a huge extra layer. Looking on top of that, I think it's just as hard.
Are we planning to backport new changes in this new compiled Ceph binary?
No, this is just for R. Yeah. It's just too big of a thing to just throw into a minor release, because it changes how you have to get the binary in.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the issue is, say we start making changes now, we don't even break it up. We just add a bunch of commands that are specific to the new version. Then we find a big bug. Oh, we need to fix the big bug. Oh, fix it on main. Oh, backport. Oh, now we have tons of merge conflicts because all the lines got shifted around and stuff in
Yeah.
the current source.
Yeah. I mean, that was the idea with the all this testing first, I guess, was that we don't want that to happen if possible. So maybe we do want to
It's
wait
hard.
on this until we're done with all that work, at least.
Yeah, I think it might make sense to defer giving Ceph ADM the ability to print out its own version for now, and then come back to that. So you've got the tracker already. We could, like I said, I could do it in phases. We could add the embedding of the version numbers like this week or next week, and then come back in a month or two and actually teach it how to interpret that file.
Yeah, I'm just looking now back at the Ceph ADM refactoring binary. I figured this would just go into one of these phases.
Yeah.
Maybe like early phase 2 or something.
Yeah.
So like right before we split things up, but right after we've done all the testing and everything. Like around.
I like it. Yeah.
Is there any reason that we don't just use the Ceph version, like from Git describe, instead of creating our own?
Oh, that's what it would be. It would
That's what
be.
it would be. Okay, cool.
Yeah. So the issue is that you go to downloadceph.com. Oh, so don't let me forget. I have a new topic or to follow up on that one because I keep forgetting. So person X goes off, gets a Ceph ADM binary from somewhere, has it on their system, and they want to know its provenance or whatever. So they run like Ceph ADM -- version. And it says, oh, I was built on such and such a date, such and such a Git hash, such and such a Git version, if that information is available inside the binary.
Yep, perfect. Yeah. And then I think just like Adam sort of inferred, we just want to be really, really careful that interface between the manager and the binary, we don't introduce breaking changes. Like I would almost prefer it's just informational only, and we don't depend on that in any way.
Agreed. 100%.
So, yeah, cool.
Yeah, I don't think there's any reason to touch that because the fact that we already deploy the Ceph ADM from the manager module already solves all the dependencies and the version issues. So I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. To try to use a fancy word again, it's all about provenance. Like, where did this come?
All right. Yeah. So I guess we'll wait on this until we get through all the testing and everything. But right before we split things up, we'll try to figure this one out. It sounds like we kind of have a good idea of what we want to do as well. We just have to figure out some of the details with the build process and everything. All right. Is that topic?
Right.
Anyone have any other topics?
Yeah, so what I kind of forgot to follow up on last week was this whole, what do we do about how do people get Ceph ADM now with this compiled version? The whole, like, download Ceph.com. I think we had discussed it briefly. Like, we need to reach out to someone probably who has more knowledge about this whole thing. So I'm assuming we just mail DevL and CC a couple specific people, or does anyone have any suggestions?
I know we talked about this a bit before, and I had said that I would have asked David Galloway if he was still around. I think who else said, I don't know, maybe like Dan Mick also knows something about this. He seems to know a lot about some of these periphery things. I could see if Guillaume knows anything, because he knows about the Ceph build repo at least, and maybe there's something related to there. There's a few people that maybe could ask, but I don't actually know any, like, for sure any one person that would know, honestly.
Okay. So I'm leaning towards just kind of yelling to the world via an email to the list. DevDev, maybe CCing a couple of the people on it and just seeing if anyone responds.
Yeah, there's really something part of that release process that has to get figured out, I guess. Most of the time, it's just there'll be some like devel major main branch one on like Chakra somewhere or something, so you don't have to worry about it too much.
All right. So what I'll do probably this afternoon, and I'll send a draft to you, Adam, just to kind of double check, and then I'll try and send that off today.
All right, that sounds good. Definitely won't hurt to ask. So,
Do we have already some documentation, like something that asks the user to go and curl to get?
Yeah.
to
So
get
let me link the PR I have. It's basically a to do right now.
There's not much of it, but there is like one or two spots where it tells you to curl directly from GitHub, basically. Which still works on Quincy and Pacific, but if you try to do it on main at this point, it wouldn't work. So
Yeah.
I think this is linked in the last week's.
Yeah, I'll just drop it in chat. I'm just slow. So if you look at that, part of it is just changes to the oh, I spelled instructions wrong. I'll fix that later. Yeah, I just threw a whole bunch of to do, just kind of to make it obviously wrong.
Yeah. Are we publishing? As far as I know, we are building daily images of Ceph, and they are available somewhere in the.
And they make packages every day in the Ceph CI, and you can find them in Shaman. I don't think there's any reason they're going to ever publish FADM there, because they already put them on Chakra, I think, as part of that build process now. And maybe there is some reason somebody would want to go look for it. And you can find them somewhere though. It's definitely possible to find like these built ones on there. But this is just for basically the official release ones. You want to have a different place.
But for the daily releases of the images we built of main, where are they published?
I don't know exactly. I know we pull them as part of the tautology test now because that's it gets FADM. I don't remember where exactly they are.
They're actually on Chakra. So Shaman built one.
From Quai, the images we get from Quai are these images?
Those are the containers. Daily? This is a different thing. What were you saying, Mike?
So like Shaman actually pushes the build thing out on Chakra, and then it's retained for a little bit of time for the tautology testing. So that's like with the daily builds or the any Shaman build. So, and then the point releases, I think there is an artifact on download.ceph.com, kind of like in line with the RPM somewhere. At least there. Oh.
Okay. Are you sure you're saying that there already is something on download.ceph.com somewhere as part of the build?
There should be, yeah. Last time I talked to Dan, he thought it would work, and
the problem is there hasn't been any actual releases with this yet, so
that's right, yeah.
Any examples. But if Dan already thought it would work, then maybe we should just ask him about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's do. Yeah, I believe it'd be like in the no arch directory or something like this.
Oh. I'll definitely make sure he's on this explicit CC list. That's D, Mick, right?
I think so, right? Right, Mike? It's Dan Mick?
Yeah, right. Oh, and actually, I do see it for Quincy. So here, I'll post in check out this link here, and you'll see there's a Ceph ADM.
It's for Quincy.
Yeah, because I think he switched over the build process. Yeah, he went to like the dev new build process or something like this, so it did affect Pacific and Quincy.
Okay, yeah. So even though this is actually just the script pasted on a website, but Isotopy is 0.
Yeah, but the same thing should occur for Reef with the compiled binary.
Maybe we'll actually already be okay. We just have to confirm things. This might be where the link ends up being. So it'll be like RPM dash Reef or something.
I can't see anything for if in this page.
Yeah, there's definitely no builds yet for it. They haven't even finished the pull request to even make that version exist in like the Ceph repo is still in progress.
Yeah, that's the big pull request in progress. Okay.
One Radislaw is working on. So there's definitely nothing up there for Reef yet. Like Reef is just a name currently.
Yeah, actually, there is nothing yet.
All right, cool. So maybe we're actually closer to this already working than we thought. They still have to do. I know people wanted this signed, and I have to figure that out at some point.
Yeah.
But maybe as far as actually getting it there, maybe it's actually already a thing. All right. Is there anything else we have to say on that topic? It sounds like we kind of know where we're going with that. Confirm with Dan what's going on. And we'll actually able to figure out the signatures. It sounds like it's actually in a better spot than I thought it was.
Yeah, I just want to keep that ball rolling and not forget about it too much. I think definitely. I kind of forgot about it last week.
All right. Do we have any other topics, or is that it for today?
Nothing from my side.
Okay. Sounds like we're done. Guess we'll call it there, and I'll see you all next week.
Great. Thank you.
Bye.
See you guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.